Howdy, folks. Glad to be here. I'm laughing because I only say howdy in Colorado. I don't say howdy when I'm on the boat. When I'm on the boat, then I say, ahoy, ahoy there. I should tell you a little bit about how I got sailing, because the story begins in Colorado. When we were the Boulder Valley Sail and Power Squadron, Richard Allen was the presenter for the program. And he came and he talked with a friend. They talked about corsairs, the trimarans, and they also talked the sea wind catamarans. And I knew there that they were being built in Vietnam. I had read about them. They were high performance boats, and I ordered one. And I'm going to talk today about the emotions of sailing. And boy, there was quite a bit of joy when that boat came off the lift. I got a picture of it, still on my computer here in Colorado. But after that, the story shifts to the water. So let's get on the boat and go sailing.
As I was out walking down Paradise Street,
My boat called
Hey, blow the man down.
a pretty young dandy.
Okay, we're ready to go sailing here. Charlie, you better, Charlie, get down in the cabin.
Way, blow the man down.
So I took in all sail and cried way enough now.
Give me some time to blow the man down.
I hailed her in
Well, ahoy there. Here we are. Just imagine there that we're on the Charles Edward. It's a 38-foot sailing catamaran, and you're ready to come aboard. I'm glad you're coming. That's part of the joy of sailing. When a new crew comes and you get to meet them, maybe for the very first time, or you get to just greet them, and they're people who you really enjoy sailing with. So that's another joy. I'll go through the emotions that I had sailing the Charles Edward, but certainly the crew that have come aboard have really brought joy. One thing that when I went sailing quite recently with the Henses and Denise Allaire was we had a wind over the quarter. I don't know if you power boaters have the same experience, but sailors, anytime two sailors get close and they're going in the same direction, each sailor wants their boat to go faster. So we were sailing out of Narragansett Neck, getting out of Narragansett from Jamestown and Newport, and going on our way to Cuttyhunk. And we had to be tacking back and forth. And those monohulls with experienced sailors and good boats around Newport, Rhode Island, you really get some fine monohulls. And they were cleaning our clock. They were just getting so far ahead. And but then we got out into the Sound, Rhode Island Sound, and as we got out into the Sound, and it was blowing pretty heavy. It was blowing like 20 knots, and the wind was coming over the stern quarter. I think it was the starboard quarter, and we were just sailing along, and we had these rollers coming, and these rollers were pushing us along. And monohulls have a hull speed that limits how fast they can go before they lose control. My catamaran doesn't have that limitation. So I was watching, and those boats that got out of that Newport Neck quite a bit quicker than us, they were losing control and had to start reducing sail. We didn't have to reduce sail, so we just passed them by. And there was a certain inner joy, maybe just the joy that, oh, this is a good boat. I wanted to go through some other emotions that I had. One was anxiety. When I first started sailing, I was anxious, and my anxiety affected my demeanor as I interacted with crew. Am I forgetting to do this or that, or and then real errors like almost running into a buoy, almost sailing into a buoy. And one of the advices that Richard Allen, 180 Marine, the guy who sold me the boat, said to me is, Peter, I think there that when you're on the boat, it's important for you to think about how you are when you dance. So when you dance, I see a joy that's coming and you're having a lot of fun. Take that joy and the joy that you bring to other people and the energy and transplant that onto the boat. And that change in demeanor reduces anxiety for the crew. So there's other things that help reduce anxiety. And one of the wonderful things about our squadron, ABC Colorado, formerly the Boulder Valley Sail and Power Squadron, is the courses. The coursework here is excellent. I've taken seamanship from Vince. I've taken navigation from Don. I've taken weather from Ron. Vince has also given me information about boat electronics. And then there's the informal side. Besides the classes, I remember Doug Hughes telling me there that when he and his wife sail, the first one that says it's time to reef, that's when they reef. And boy, that can reduce a lot of anxiety, because reefing late is a very significant problem. Reefing early is no problem whatsoever. I think about some of the informal lessons that, like, I had the greatest of anxiety when I was looking at our chart plotter, and this is night, and I'm on the 2 to 6 a.m. watch. And here's this high-speed fishing boat, and it's coming towards my port side. So in that circumstance, I'm the stand-on vessel, and I see our courses are converging, and that's one of the things there that I learned in seamanship, is that when you have narrowing distance and converging courses, you're on a collision course. We were on a collision course, and I was so full of anxiety that I didn't radio. Instead, what I did was I took all steam off, and then I put it in reverse in order to avoid the collision, and the boat maybe 30 or 40 yards went by at a really high speed. One of the informal things that I learned in plain talk with Harry Hammond was that, Peter, you're probably hard to see at night. Your AIS, my automated identification system, only receives. So I knew what boat that was about to crash into us, but they didn't have any signal from me. And then I didn't have a radar reflector on the boat. So those are two things. Harry said, Peter, that's pretty much 2 strikes. I don't know if he phrased it quite that way, but he conveyed that message, and those parts are now on order. Other anxieties, frustration, sadness, was when I was sailing alone. And there's a lot of experienced sailors here that have no difficulty doing solo trips. Power boaters probably do it as often as much as they have crew. I'm not sure on that, but I suspect that. And but I was going to leave to deliver relief supplies alone, and I was and there was 2 ways to get out of this harbor. One was through a passage known as Devil's Backbone, and there's actually a ship sunk there, and the channel goes most irregularly, and I didn't want to do that. And then the other way out of the bay, when I was with my brother Charles, we had rowed out towards that inlet, he said, "Oh, don't go out this way." No, I wouldn't go out this way. So the 2 ways to get out, one's Devil's Backbone, and the other, my brother's telling me, I wouldn't go out that way. I decided to go out the southern one, which was not Devil's Backbone. But I had some anxiety, and I shared that with the people around me. And they said, "Peter, look at what you just sailed. That shouldn't be that difficult." But I was anxious. And what I neglected to see was that a folding chair had leaned against the other steering wheel. And when I went to turn it, it prevented the turn. I did hit the button to turn it by the automatic pilot, 5 degrees or something. And the wheel was braced against that chair, and the weakest link in the steering broke. Boy, that was downheartening. And then it happened when I was out away from the marina. And on the chart plotter, it says no rudder response. So that actually happened. I got that message 3 times. And each time I knew I knew more by the third time. It wasn't really broken. It had just come apart, and I was able to reassemble it. What I mean to say is that you gain experience, and that reduces anxiety. But going to ABC Colorado and taking their courses really is a way to bring experience on board. You can bring experience through crew members, and you can also bring experience through your learning. That's the way to reduce anxiety. But then there's frustration. Say you're at the marina, or you're at least on a dock, or you could be on a mooring ball. I was on a mooring ball and trying to change the electron, the solenoid. I said electron, the solenoid that controls the gas to my boat. And it looked like it was going to be beyond my ability. I didn't have the proper tools. So a fellow from an electronics company comes aboard to change it, and he gets seasick. So he starts puking over the side, and so it didn't get fixed. My boat's on the hard right now, and I'm getting that fixed there. But that can be a little bit frustrating when you just don't have any propane gas. You know, you've bought this food and then you don't have any propane gas. So that can be a frustration. Frustration can lead to anger. It really can. I had so many frustrating moments when I first got the boat. The bowsprit, designed to retract by sea wind, and as it was delivered on my boat, was awful. It was downright awful. I deployed it, put it down, and it had a line that went to the top of it, but all the line did was it just pulled it back. And then the radius was the same whether it dipped down or if it went up in the air. So it just never stayed in position. So you have this giant sail, bigger than the mainsail, screecher, and all of a sudden it's flapping wildly. The booms, the spar, the bowsprit's up in the air, and it's too difficult to roll a reef. You can't just wind it up on itself. You have to drop it, and with all this wind, it just doesn't. You just don't release the halyard, and it drops. You got to be out there. You're basically wrestling the thing, you know, like that. I mean, it's a really tough thing to do. And there was a crew member aboard as my brother and I went through that, and he said, well, "I can tell you guys were once wrestlers." So that. But there is no place, absolutely no place on the boat for anger. If you're underway, if you're making way, and you face a problem, you can't even afford frustration, let alone anger. You got to come up with Plan B or Plan C. If you're out in the dinghy and you run out of gas, you got to get the oars out, or you got to wave and get towed. You just can't. I told you. I mean, you can't. It has no place. Although once you're on shore, I was so angry with sea wind, with all the problems, reverse polarity, a cabin up front that didn't have any lighting installed. I got on my email, and people were wondering, who is this lunatic from Colorado? Yeah. So, eventually I got over it. But what I understand from many people who have bought boats is that that's ever so common. You buy a new boat, and there's this whole list of things that's wrong with it. I don't think that's the same way with a car, but everybody tells me that has bought a new boat. That's the way it is with a boat. So that can be frustrating. As I mentioned, it made me never angry on board. Sadness. Boy, I spent like $7,000 on the sail that is attached to the bowsprit. And every time I went to fly it, I'd have that moment where you pick up speed when you fly this giant screecher. And then the bowsprit goes up, and it's a big problem. That was so frustrating. And eventually the bowsprit broke and it damaged other parts of the boat. I hired somebody from a local boat yard and we got it off. And he said, what should I do with it? I said, do you have a place, a junkyard? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, if you take it for me to the junkyard, but before you leave, please piss on it. And I don't know if he did. I never got to see him again, but it certainly was off the boat. So I've gone through joy, I've gone through anxiety, sadness. That was connected to sadness, that whole story about the bowsprit, that I was just so disappointed time and again not being able to fly that sail, because I think it would have been the moments that it was up, it was a lot of fun, and the boat just really went well. But the other sadness is here you've got these delightful people that you've been sailing with. You land on Harbor Island, and there's all these parties. So there's all these parties that are going on, and eventually, you know, maybe you get kind of tired of it. I'm watching a football game with my brother Charles and a couple other guys, and the football game ends, and there's the next football game coming up. But I go to the boat and to take a nap, and my brother Charles, he goes over to the next marina, and then there he is having beers with John Elway, watching the Clemson Tigers versus the Alabama Crimson Tide. And he comes back and he tells me, I mean, he's from South Carolina, so it's not a big deal. I'm from Colorado. That would have been a big deal for me. I would have liked to say, you know, I was down in the Bahamas drinking beer with John Elway. Can't say it. But then you have all those good times, and then the crew starts to leave. You know, you're staying on the boat the longest. The skipper's staying on the boat owner, staying on and then Gregory leaves, Martha leaves, Denise leaves, Brother Charles leaves. You know, Bob leaves, Sue leaves, Ann leaves. All these people that you really enjoy their company, and then they're gone, and you're kind of sitting on the boat, and then I had that incident where I took the boat out alone. I told you that story, and then the steering broke, and I was so disappointed. I had the blues, and so I flew home, and then came back, and we eventually did get those supplies, those relief supplies, delivered to the Bahamas, and was quite happy about that. There was John Chatting contributed a lot of the supplies, nice backpack, Ann Hammond. I won't go through all the people that donated, but we were sailing into Little Harbor. At any rate, where the Hopetown, not Little Harbor, Hopetown, in Abaco in the Bahamas, that was pretty much destroyed by Hurricane Dorian. And we call out, do you know anybody with little children? And these two Bahamians in this boat that was really rough. It was really a rough boat. They were silent. I thought, oh, that's not a good lead question. Do you know anybody with children? So I quickly jumped into the explanation that we had new clothes for children that we wanted to give to somebody in need. And it might have been a father about 60 or 50, hard to tell, and then a son in that really rough boat. And the younger man calls out, well, I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and my wife's pregnant. So he got the new clothes, and afterwards Denise said to me, we should have given him the condoms. So anyway, there was some joy there. There was the joy of the parties, and then there's the joy that you can experience when you're sailing and you see the sunset and the wind is just perfect and the engine's off, it's just quiet, and the stars are lighting up. And there's so many moments that are like that are absolutely delightful. So that's the emotions of sailing. Thank you, folks.
We be laid.
To me way, hey, blow the man down.
Don't never take heed of what pretty girls say.
Give me some time to blow the man down.